I was working as editor on there were four language versions of the trials.
Right.
And it was not a job that could have been described anywhere else under the term editor, because the printers who were printing it were German-speaking and didn't know any of the other three languages, and it was the process was extracting sense from the mess they made of it.
Right.
And sometimes you had to check with the translators or the interpreters or whatever. But what ended up being the record, I hope, was something like the real record.
What an interesting job. How did you come to have that job?
I don't know. I was working in Washington, and I had wanderlust and wanted to go abroad, and somebody that I had interviewed for something else told me about it.
I'll be darned.
And I went and interviewed and got sent, and met some awfully nice people on the way.
Including your husband?
Including my husband, eventually. Mm-hmm.
Now, were you there for the first?
No, I was not. We were working on the record of the first trial, but it wasn't worked on until it was over.
I see.
Other trials were going on, but not the main trial.
So you were actually in Nuremberg working on the trial record of the first
right.
trial. Now, ultimately it was published, the record?
Yes.
And was that what we see today in is it the blue set or the green set?
Right. Well, originally it was a green set. I once had a set. It was 52 volumes or something like that. And somewhere in the, I don't know how many times, we decided to get rid of it. Obviously, you didn't sit every night or even...
Oh, I can understand that.
So I clamor for it, but there were probably enough volumes printed that somewhere buried in their archive.
Recording history?
And we faced it right. we were just hoping that what was recorded was correct.
Right.
You know. We had so many difficulties.
How long did it take?
A couple of years, maybe a year, maybe not the total of 2 years, but I was there 3 years in the end, but wasn't working on that the whole time. And, you know, my memory isn't accurate enough for me to tell you how long I worked on the record, and then I went and worked on something else.
Did you, obviously you met your husband there at some point.
Hmm?
Now, was he an interpreter in the courtroom itself, or was he...
Yes, he was a simultaneous interpreter in the courtroom.
What was his impression of the whole trial?
It was very mixed up, but as it was for all of us, the simultaneous interpreters had a heck of a time. But I remember how often he told me that when you were translating from German into English, you had to guess what the verb was, because the German verb was going to come to the end, but you had to put it in the English sentence before you got to the end. And he said it means we always often end up saying, I should say, and making a correction. It was a very tense life that they led when they were in the courtroom.
Now, was he there for the first trial or the subsequent trial?
First trial, and then eventually for some of the subsequent trials.
Did he have an impression of how the trial was going and Justice Jackson's role in that?
I'm sure that he did, but he didn't really talk to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did. I don't recall his ever sitting down and saying anything particular about Justice Jackson. He had a lot of respect for Justice Jackson, but I don't remember the specifics. Life went on, in this country too,
Mm-hmm.
and people forgot about Nuremberg.
Right.
Things just went forward, and if it was mentioned, people would say, "Oh, you were at Nuremberg," but then they were more involved in whatever was immediate now.
Right.
It wasn't. There were very few times that anybody ever said, "What happened?" and how did you take it, and so on and so forth.
Well, I'm just delighted you spent a few minutes with me right now. I'm thrilled.
It's nice once in a while to bring it up, but I'm sorry I'm not more forthcoming about something terribly interesting that happened. It was